I don't know how many brothers there are on that side, but I'm...
And yet you would think that a psychic would know that sort of thing.
a friend of Dorothy.
Oh, interesting.
They are having me highlight, if we go back generationally, some indications of that.
You might have a gay ancestor. Sure, why not? I mean, you can say that. No one can dispute it, so why not? Hello lovely people, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new. If you have been here for a little while, you will know that I don't like psychics. Now, I'm not talking about your friend Miriam, who quietly tells you that sometimes she thinks she has prescient dreams. I don't care if you do your own tarot readings, if you check your weekly horoscope or listen to ghost podcasts. Life is too short for me to be the fun police. God knows I have enjoyed some terribly cheesy ghost shows in my time. I've got a book about the haunted forest of Dean. I even went on a ghost hunt. Supernatural entertainment has an allure. It can be super fun. What is not fun is the self-professed psychic who makes his living from taking advantage of people's sadness. I heard someone recently refer to psychic mediums as grief vampires, and I love that. I'm going to use that all the time now. Let's get this out of the way early. There are no fake psychics because there are no real psychics. There are no psychics. Psychic powers are not a real phenomenon. The only distinction worth making is between people who are genuinely deluded into believing that they have psychic powers and people who knowingly pretend. Every television psychic, travelling psychic TV, online telephone psychic, they all fall under the latter. They have to be to keep up the pretense long enough to actually make money. They make money by capitalising on people's grief, hence grief vampires, by pretending to connect people with their deceased loved ones for money. That is not very disco. That is why I and many skeptics have such vitriol for this specific group of fraudsters. I'd like to start with my absolute favourite hateful fraud from the UK ghost scene, the now sadly departed medium Derek Acorah. Derek was on a British television show called Most Haunted, which, forgive my past enabling of this practice, I loved. It was a very hilarious show in which Derek and his team, including Yvette Fielding, whose job it was to scream, would travel around the UK to different haunted locations, and Derek would get possessed by a ghost. Every single time. So it was a lot of him going like, whoa. And shockingly, no one seemed to have a problem with this at the time, using the opportunity of being possessed by a different person to call the women around him sluts and bitches quite a lot. He looked insane. He just sort of jiggled around like this, being like, Norma! Enid. Who? It was fucking brilliant. This was fun and silly in part because no living person was actually being targeted, and also because it was so obviously fake. However, Derek did do his share of live shows, and I bring this up because it will be relevant later. A lot of TV psychics from very polished media struggle a little when it comes to classic cold reading. Quick glossary moment. Cold reading is the act of making someone believe that one has psychic powers using certain techniques. Leading questions, observation, a lot of generic statements. It's the TV psychic thing where they find and contact a relative of an audience member. You'll have seen it somewhere before. Cold reading is very easy. I was a skeptical kid and not super clued into people's emotions yet, and I did it at about 14, successfully, in a room full of friends. Huge error in judgment. I was an idiot and I had the mandate to just entertain the room for a couple of minutes, and I thought this would be the perfect time to test my cold reading skills, just to prove how easy and fake it is. So I passed on a message from a friend's deceased grandmother. I know, I did tell them it wasn't real, but still, it haunts me to this day, ironically. Anyway, I don't tell this story to brag, especially because it's horrible, but to point out how incredibly easy cold reading can be. Hot reading, then, is a similar thing, making someone believe that one has psychic abilities, but with preparation beforehand, using pre-acquired information without the subject's knowledge. If you've ever been to one of these sort of live psychic shows, you might have encountered someone gathering really basic information about audience members as you go in. That is in order to prepare some quick research for hot reading. If they look you up and it comes straight up online that you lost such and such family member recently, they're going to use that information for hot reading on stage. I have to share with you a favourite clip of mine courtesy of Harry Hill. I was rewatching some old television a while ago and Derek came up on a live show.
Reg? And he's also mentioned Frank. Thank you. Okay, what's that uniform? In his younger years, I can see the uniform. In his younger years, please, I don't know what he was in the Air Force. I don't feel he was a pilot because of his attire, but he's keen to show me that. and he's transported back into the older age in which he passed. He may not even be family, he may be just known to you.
Frank or Reg? Anyone?
Okay. Yes, please, could you... microphone, please.
What
you say?
Good afternoon. My father, his name was Hugh, and he was in the Air Force. And he didn't fly, he was a civil engineer.
That'll do.
Right, I'm joined very graciously by a male dog. I can say it's male. A male dog. Woof, 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 woof.
Yeah, it's a slow day on the psychic scene when all you can reach is a dog. Now, my favourite thing about Derek Acorah, and the reason that I usually bring him up in conversations about, like, TV psychics, is because he was sacked from Most Haunted after being outed by a skeptic on an episode. Oh my goodness, it was glorious. Here's the moment it happened, lovingly referred to in hindsight as the Creed Cadaver incident.
Is he telling you something, Derek? Is Sam giving you a name?
Creed! Creed!
Sometimes on these psychic shows, including on Most Haunted, there would be a skeptic of some kind travelling with them, usually an expert in some field, often psychology. Again, if you've watched ghost shows, you probably know what I'm talking about. People in the room are feeling cold and experiencing all these things, and then there'll be a little bit where the skeptic does a bit to camera saying, yeah, this is the logical explanation for why people can experience that. And then we cut back to the ghost bit, and pretend that the skeptic was never there, and everyone ignores them and assumes that the possession is real. It's a wonderful format for a television show, really. So on this occasion, Derek and the team were joined by Dr. Ciarán O'Keeffe, who is a psychologist who specialises in, parapsychology. Unbeknownst to Derek, Dr. O'Keeffe had slipped the name Creed Cadaver to the cameraman, coming up with a story about him being a South African jailer in ye olde times or something, in the hopes that the cameraman would pass it along to Derek, which obviously he did, which means, granted most of us knew this already, but after Derek was outed as a fake, a lot of the people that worked on the show, specifically Yvette Fielding, were so shocked and dismayed and upset that they had been lied to by him for so long. Clearly this proves that at least some of the crew knew that they were faking this shit. Obviously. So the cameraman passed this name on to Derek, who then was possessed by him, not realising that Creed Cadaver is in fact an anagram of Derek Faker. Unsurprisingly, they went with a particular choice on the spelling of Creed Cadaver for the episode. It's such a beautiful and rare moment because it threatened the whole TV show. This only survived publication and became widely acknowledged because Dr. O'Keeffe planned to reveal this information later at a university lecture. If you had the platform and the control, there is not one psychic that you couldn't fool with a pretend deceased relative or a trick name like Creed Cadaver. This is why such care is put into these glossy TV shows for hot readings. Only the best, most convincing work is edited together and left in the show. The audiences to these live events are only full of people who are already prepared to believe and or are desperate to believe because of their grief. This takes us across the pond to Tyler Henry, an American grief vampire who looks like a member of a 90s boy band. Tyler Henry has a Netflix show called Life After Death. From the trailer, it looks like he is the realest deal since Mystic Meg. Slightly infuriating because it is such a polished show. It's a Netflix show. We, the audience, have no measure for how much is real or even how much is good cold reading versus how much is hot reading, how much was just handed to him on a piece of paper by, the studio researcher. This kind of TV show is pointless from a skeptic perspective because there is just no guarantee that anyone involved is really just meeting him or that he knew nothing about them beforehand, etc., etc. I'd love to see the footage on the cutting room floor from this show, Fortunately, we also have Live from the Other Side, which, as the title suggests, is a live cold reading show featuring Tyler Henry. So this is our best approximation of what this sharp-looking young man is really like in a live setting. So let's take a look together and discuss, shall we? Oh, look, he's got a little dramatic intro.
And I have a rather unusual ability. I don't exactly see dead people, but I definitely communicate with them.
Definitely.
I receive messages from those who've passed, for those still here, proving our loved ones never truly leave us.
Proving! Tyler Henry is proof of the other side, guys.
Who I'm going to read or what messages may come through, but powerful revelations await from the other side.
This is Live from the Other Side with Tyler Henry.
Why does it's very odd that there's a presenter. I guess it's American. American TV's always been a bit weird. It's just weird that there's like, this is a show with a host whose name is the title, and then there's just another woman presenting it. Like, why is she here?
Always wondered if this would ever happen.
I was hoping this would happen. I was just talking to your amazing mom.
How are you, Lillian? Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Hi, I'm Brianna. Nice to meet you.
Hi,
I'm Allison. Nice to meet you,
So
Tyler.
wonderful to meet you. Thank you all for being here.
got
thank
Aren't they all the most like, you know, they're all so blonde and smiley with these weirdly perfect teeth. This is just so American. It's so TV psychic and so American. I'm shook. The guests come on, he meets them, he finds out who he's seeing for the first time. Again, we have nothing but our own faith to put into this Netflix show that he really is just seeing them for the first time and he didn't know who he was going to read. From what I've read from people watching the show from a skeptical perspective, it does seem like he is genuinely not aware of who he's meeting until he sees them for the first time here, so we'll take that as give him the benefit of the doubt and say that this is the first time he is finding out who he's meeting on this couch. I guess the other side got like a heads up, so they know whose relatives need to like phone in to Tyler Henry.
All right, well, Tyler, you know who this is, but this is comedian, actor, host of my favorite podcast, The Handsome Pod.
I don't know who any of these people are. I don't know if that's because I'm out of touch or because I'm English. I got no fucking idea who these people are. I take this lady's word for it that they are celebrities.
You're bringing them. The energy is so good, and it really helps when we have such a unique experience like this. We never know what's really going to happen. It helps to have people with us who are part of our history. So I'm excited to get to delve in today, and basically I'll just kind of scribble. I'll communicate everything that comes in. And really for me, what substantiates a reading is the specifics, the details that are really only known between us and the people who've passed away.
Yeah, no shit. The specifics are what we're looking for, because, like I said earlier, any idiot can cold read. So, Tyler Henry does this thing. Part of his gift is this thing called automatic writing. And sometimes it's not writing, but it's pictures or symbols or whatever. Automatic writing, also known as psychography, or psychography, I don't know. The idea is that it is not Tyler Henry writing these words, it is the spirit channeling through him and moving his pen. You'll have seen it in a lot of horror movies, perhaps read about it in books, because that is where the majority of real psychic phenomenon is influenced by. The go-to scientific explanation for automatic writing is a thing called the ideomotor effect. This is a type of unconscious muscular activity, not like muscular, but like the muscles are moving, that is sometimes associated with disassociation, like a dissociative state. It's been suggested that it is an effect of auto-suggestion or auto-hypnotization, meaning that people can genuinely believe that this is a real thing while they're doing it, or after they're doing it, and they might genuinely like not remember or not consciously having written, and they might be completely genuine about not consciously having written anything, but it still is a psychological phenomenon, not a paranormal one. The problem, of course, with automatic writing is like the problem with most psychic phenomenon. We have no idea how much of this is unconscious. We have no way of knowing whether this is information that Tyler Henry is just writing down or whether this is information that is being channeled by a spirit. We just have to, as good skeptical individuals, we have to take the most likely explanation, which I believe is the ideomotor effect.
And so very oftentimes we find that involves family dynamics, inside jokes, people's last words, but sometimes even recent conversations we ourselves have recently had. And that oftentimes will kind of come through. So if that does, don't be surprised.
I think this is really interesting, that Tyler Henry begins by prepping his audience. By his audience, I mean the people that he is performing to and with, not the audience that are watching live. I mean the people that he's doing the reading for. He's prepping people to expect certain things. And one of the things, I guess we'll see as we go, but one of the things you'll notice about a good cold reading psychic is their ability to this is the leading questions, the leading statements part, where people especially people who already believe in this phenomena and really desperately want to contact their loved ones, because of course they do. People who really want to engage are so willing to talk. This is something that happens in this is like psychological stuff that happens in like police interrogations, right? You know, cross-examinations on the witness stand. Like, this is a psychological phenomena. You can, I use the word manipulate lightly because it's not necessarily deliberate manipulation, but you can lead people into wanting to talk about something, and here he is prepping them for the kind of things that they might come across. So if he says something that might be a bit vague or a bit general if we really think about it, but it relates to a conversation that they have had with somebody deceased previously, they are now prepped to know that that's something to expect. So they're thinking, oh, that's so crazy because I just talked to somebody about that. And Tyler Henry didn't know that before, but they've offered that information up, so he can now say, yes, that's exactly what they are telling me. A good skeptical scientific approach to, as much as you can have a scientific approach to a psychic reading, would be to not give any prior information on what to expect. This is leading. This whole section is very leading. If it was a scientific scientific-based psychic study, you would not provide all this information up front because you're already leading them to believe and expect certain things.
Awareness of the things that we do, and it can be really powerful. My goal is just to kind of create a space through these readings where coincidences, meaningful ones, can kind of come through. And if I say something that's particularly resonant, the goal is for it to leave you feeling affirmed, so that when you leave this experience, you know at the very least, okay, I can move forward in this direction a little bit more confidently.
That's Tyler Henry explaining to his audience that he is just here to tell people what they want to hear. Coincidences are what it's all about, and that can make you feel good and validated in your belief that you have this thing with a loved one. Nobody, this is another thing you'll notice if you watch any live TV psychics or any sort of psychic things. They are always connecting people with loved ones in a positive way, which is good. At the very least, they're not taking advantage of these grieving people and then saying, yeah, no, your brother, he does hate you. You're right. He is still angry and bitter about this argument that you had. It is always that, no, he forgives you, blah, 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 which again is a relief for the sake of these poor people's sanity, but is another indicator that it's all fucking bullshit.
Perhaps from a message. So we'll kind of see where we go.
I hate that he's like this all the time. It's like he's like a children's TV presenter, and so it'll be nice, and so it'll be really good. Why do they do that? Why do they do the squinty, huge smile? Like, oh yeah, so it's going to be really good. Like, yeah, no, honestly, no, you're so small and cute, and so I've got to talk to you like this for some reason. It's going to be lovely.
All the objects, we've got a number of different things.
Yeah.
I'm curious, fortunate. I mean, we've got like a lot, and I'll try to make my way to as many as I can today. But show me what you've got.
We got some port here.
Okay, so they've brought their own items. Once again, this is like a whole section of prep work. I mean, is this not obvious? Were people really watching this show and being convinced, like, while watching this whole section that is preparing them in advance for what to expect? They're giving him information for what he can work on. So they've brought their own objects, and he's going to ask them to explain them. If this was a real scientific skeptical situation, they wouldn't show the objects. They would have brought their objects along and they'd keep them hidden in their bag so that Tyler Henry couldn't know what they were, and only the spirits channeling through him would be able to see. This, in fact, is giving him a visual, it's giving him a connector, something to work with. If you did this my way, the scientific way, he'd be done. His career would be over. because so much of this is clearly designed in his favor for him to look real.
I love it. We're ready to party.
That's right.
A piece of a chandelier that a person that's very close to me, it was this person's.
Got it.
And their perfume as well.
Okay. Do you mind if I hold?
Obviously, they're not saying this chandelier fell on my grandfather. That was an awful thing. It's because I played Nancy Drew recently and I dropped a chandelier on someone in that game. My dreams have all come true.
Get me out of here.
Oh, he's completely fine. That's why that came to mind. But they're not saying exactly whose it was or what the relevance is, but they're saying what the item is and why it's important to them, which is a huge clue, right? That's a lot to work with for a good cold reader.
Hold on to the perfume?
Please, yes.
Cool.
I love the perfume sample.
I mean, I could have bought the whole thing, but
You only need the sample.
the sample's enough.
Okay, it's the essence.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That's
All right, let me give this a scribble, and I'll just kind of get a sense of where I'm going. Objects just kind of represent often who we're hoping to connect with, but multiple people.
I love, and this is such a common psychic thing as well, looking up here. Like, it's so that the psychic thing is so tropey that we still envision like heaven with dead people up there. The other realm, if it existed, would not be fucking. It's not like if you squint enough you can see it up there. You're just looking further up into the atmosphere or at the ceiling. It's so funny how tropey all this stuff is.
Can come in through one object. So let's see where we go there.
We wanted to know if someone comes that we don't want to talk to.
Yeah.
Can we say pass?
We can.
We can.
That's
We can
very
send them
funny
back into the
question.
ether. We'll slingshot them.
We don't want to waste time.
No, I
No one's ever asked
understand.
that question before.
That is a funny thing to ask.
That's true.
It is.
Never mind, Tyler. We don't want to.
So I notice, I mean, this is pretty obvious because and I guess you can forgive this by saying he's like looking to see if he's got anything, but he's looking down while he's writing. I mean, he could just be looking down to be like, yeah, I'm going to make that look like this name. I feel like he should be blindfolded or something while he's doing his automatic writing, but he's like looking down at his piece of paper and being like, ha 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 ha, yeah.
Let me look there. Okay, I'm going to hand this back to you because I do feel some unexpected connections from that we'll kind of talk about. Couple different things. So, Mom, on the way here, I was in the car with you and I was telling you I was getting like a really strong impression. Can you share with me like who I said that would be out?
The uncle thing.
An uncle thing.
Who
And what did I
marched
say
to the
about
beat
uncle?
of his own drum.
Beating to his own drum. So,
Did you hear? She already passed.
She said,
That's Tyler's mum. He brings his mum on his show. It's such a, there was a, it's very dated now, but it was extremely funny at the time. Great cast, great comedy cast. There was a TV show called Father Ted. We won't talk about the writer, just don't mention him, okay? And there was a musician, sort of a musical artist that was like very baby-faced, and all of the like older ladies loved him and were always knitting him sweaters and everyone wanted to be his mum. That was like his appeal. That's what I get from Tyler Henry.
My lovely, lovely, may oh my.
Oh no, what's this? It's a little puppy with a broken paw.
That parody is parodying this person. Like, Tyler Henry is what was being parodied in that episode of Father Ted. That's so fucking funny. He brings his mum on the show. So he was in the car with his mum on the way over. Or what he said is the most classic cold reading funny thing. An uncle, that could be her uncle, that could be her mum's uncle, that could be her friend's uncle, that could be her great uncle, who marched to the beat of his own drum. That is horoscope level vague. I'm gonna say that the uncle probably didn't wear that perfume.
she said, so this
No,
is
I love
funny.
my uncles. I did.
It's interesting the way this comes across, but it's so random. On the way here, they were having me talk about, like, for some reason, two uncle figures, and one.
Two uncle figures could also be an uncle and a great uncle, or an uncle and a great uncle, or an uncle and your friend's uncle.
Very different than the other as far as how they would have like operated in life. But the interesting thing with that when we go to there is there's several men in your family that would have passed away closer to middle age, so 50s, 60s, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But very different in the way this comes through. I don't know how many brothers there are on that side, but
And yet you would think that a psychic would know that sort of thing. It's just so interesting that they are able to get these specifics. Like you talked about earlier, there are these specifics that we can get into and things that only the deceased would know. And yet, 99% of what they find out or what they know is so vague. I don't know how many brothers there were, but you definitely had uncles and they were different. That's all the information we've gotten so far, but presented in such a way and like interacting in such a way that it sounds compelling, even though this came from a perfume sample, which is not something that an uncle would typically have worn.
only really want to bring up two of major significance that, for the sake of this reading, I need to highlight.
Yeah.
There's a sense of one uncle beating to their own drum and the other one kind of living a little bit more of a traditional life.
Okay.
There's an emphasis for some reason. So for example, if one person goes through their whole life childless, not able to, or chooses not to have children.
Yeah.
There's very much this sense of, I see my siblings, I see other people doing their own thing, but that's not the path for me. And that comes in. And so there's kind of a quirkiness, a feeling of living by my own standards. If we talked about uncle figures, it wouldn't surprise me if one got closer to mom, their mother. So this would be your grandmother.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of like the one son that grandma would link up with more.
Just average family dynamics. We're just saying vague, normal family dynamics. And we wait for a response that confirms or denies this.
Not the same dynamic for the others. So let me figure out where this goes, but without giving too much away, you can relate to uncles,
Yes.
beating to his own drum, at least one of them.
Yeah,
very
very much.
unique kind of guy. Just
You can relate to one of those. Yes, of course I can. People have uncles. I have uncles. There are uncles in my family. There were men in my family at some point because of how life works. Ooh, really compelling so far, Tyler.
did not live traditionally is the way that I would word this.
Definitely not.
We've all been preparing for Uncles
I want to
the whole
hear
day.
more, but
Well, my joke was that they would definitely come through instead of the person I'm trying to talk to.
And that is kind of what's happening. So
They're pushing to the
I'm
front.
like, guys, come on.
bear with me. Bear with me.
so funny. It's
It
funny that
is.
you knew that too.
Yeah,
though.
that was my.
It is funny, isn't it? And yet, if we think logically about how this whole process works and the fact that TV psychics and mediums, like Tyler Henry, almost always are there connecting people to their loved ones that they want to connect with. Except for Derek Acorah and the dog. But generally, the rule of thumb is that they're connecting them with people. I mean, they're connecting whoever makes a connection. If I say, like, you know, Sophia, and they're like, oh, my grandma was called Sophia, then that's who you're meant to connect with, right? It almost imagines, like, there is a phone line that Tyler is like connecting to. And the uncles are like pushing to the front to grab the phone while other people are in the back like, who's that? Is that Tyler? Is that Tyler? Could put us on with our family member. It's just a bizarre way to view the spiritual afterlife. Like, people can somehow push to the front and come through even though they don't want to. Like, for the people there don't want to talk to them. It's just very fucking bizarre to me. That makes sense if you're cold reading, as the most logical explanation. If you're cold reading, it makes perfect sense. Oh, I've connected this way because that's what they're responding to me with, but not the person that they want to talk to. Makes sense if you're cold reading, because it's fake. If you're imagining the spiritual afterlife is real, I find it very hard to explain.
You called that from the jump.
Did, yeah.
Interesting. They'll even refer to like recent conversations we've had, so the fact that this was kind of established, the fact that it's happening.
Yeah, he said that twice, just to reaffirm your belief that he is legit. Like, remember I said earlier, like, stuff would refer to recent conversations, yeah? You're experiencing what you expected to happen. Therefore it's real? No, therefore it's suggestion and leading questions.
I want to kind of go with that just really quickly there. There are a couple acknowledgements. I do want to bring up your grandmother on your mom's side, not your dad's side, just to be clear, really strongly. That's where I'm going. And there's a strong emphasis there.
Grandma can stay.
Yes.
Yeah, she gets to say.
It wouldn't surprise me if, when we talk about uncles, if an uncle had an underlying condition that basically would have made someone feel kind of unhealthy, kind of not great, even when they would have been closer to middle age. And so this guy comes in and he's kind of like, I don't feel great. And then bam, I feel like I get taken out kind of quickly. So there's this feeling of an expedited passing despite having some underlying stuff. And there's just this sense of, I'm dragging along. And then I transition. There is, this is kind of interesting. We talk about grandma, mom's side. It just is like a warm hug. There's a joke in the way this comes across. A lot of jokes. But this is funny. Okay.
All this thinking time. Okay, I'm saying things, I'm looking at them to see how they're reacting. If they're nodding and smiling, I can keep going with this train of thought. If they're looking a little bit confused, I need to sideline while he's going, okay. He's pretending to listen while he's looking at their reactions and formulating the appropriate response.
A person gets out on stage. I know I do this when I'm nervous, before I step in front of like 2,000 or 3,000 people. I'll call upon my loved ones and I'll almost invite them in.
Yeah.
Your grandmother is giving me the sense of like coming in to the space right before we step foot on stage. So that would almost be an encouragement of like calling out to her before, inviting her to go with you. Or if you've done this, it's just kind of a way of like, you're not doing this alone. I'm going on with you.
Yeah.
And
This whole section is your grandma loves you. You liked your grandma. She was nice because grandmas love their grandkids. Grandmas dote on their grandkids. And if you miss your grandma, she's giving you encouragement. It's just the same incredibly vague but comforting. There's no information here that an outside person couldn't have known, right? We're not into any specifics like you mentioned earlier.
They are circling you specifically, and this is just good to keep in mind. Never walk alone. There's a Judy Garland song. It's good to keep in mind. A Judy Garland song. You never walk alone. Just keeps,
You'll Never Walk Alone?
Yeah.
I think it's from the musical Carousel.
Oh, really?
If I'm right.
Or Oklahoma.
Or is it Oklahoma?
Yeah,
it's
one of those.
From a musical.
But it's that sentiment's kind of coming through. If you never walk alone, you never walk alone.
Did she ever see you perform, Fortune?
No. She passed when I was 18.
Passed before. Wow, at 18, right as your life's getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things she.
That was, I think, a not that well played off attempt at a specific. Using something a bit vague, like a song, like, Judy Garland, extremely popular, gonna be extremely popular with a certain age range. What is a safe thing that she might have listened to or watched, etc.? Maybe they saw it together. If that had resonated, that would have played off as an amazing moment of this is a real psychic, that connects me to my grandma, she's really here with us. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And the presenter tried to help with it. Like, I think it's this musical, or maybe it's this musical. And if they had seen the musical together, if she had particularly loved that musical, or like Judy Garland, or some, like another song of Judy Garland's, or something like that, or actually that had played at a wedding, or, there's all of these potential options for how that could have been a beautiful, like, real psychic moment, and it didn't come off, and they're just gonna smoothly walk past it as he was thinking of it because of the phrase "you never walk alone," because the grandma is here with her. And so they've had that, like, I think it's from this. Anyway, we'll move on. Because that was clearly an attempt that didn't work. But he's done it in a way that is just subtle enough for people who are willing to believe, which again is who this is targeting, to not really question it.
Passing, and she's having me highlight this sense of knowing that you were special, and it's not to discount anybody else, but there's this feeling of like, that one is meant to be a star, and she's meant to do great things, and the only way to describe it is you need to know that she saw how individual you were, how unique you were, but viewed that as a strength.
Exactly the kind of generic thing that a grandmother would think about a grandchild. Every parent too. But every grandparent, when they're like, fawning over their young grandchild, oh, they're really smart. She's such a bright cookie. She's so smiley. She's smiling all the time. She's so curious about everything. She's a real individual, bright spark. She's going to do great things. Every grandparent thinks that. And again, it's just comforting. It's just nice, generic, vague platitudes that you could apply to almost anyone.
As something that was so much greater than the geographical location of which you were planted.
And he can say that, and obviously this is part of the hot reading sort of aspect of having celebrities on the show rather than regular people, is that even without doing prior research, he knows just from the fact that this is a comedian and an actor that, oh my god, she knew that you were gonna like be special and be known and stuff because they're a celebrity. And so fucking duh, like he can just say that and he's right because he knows he's talking to an actor and a comedian.
In her situation, she acknowledges basically towards the end of her life, she brings up the last 48 hours as being very significant. So last 2 days. And she's having me talk about this feeling of not being able to communicate. So she's having me talk about, and this lady would have been very chatty otherwise.
In the last 48 hours of a person's life, they're not going to be very well. If they're at the end of their life and they're an older person, they're probably going to be in hospital, in hospice care. They're going to struggle to... It's just another very generic statement. But of course, if it resonates with you and you're already thinking that he's a real psychic and this is real, then of course you're like, yeah, he's right. And of course he's right. He'd be right if he was saying that to almost anybody.
But not being able to talk, not being able to speak, I feel like I'm for one, as she was declining, I feel like this kind of either got raspy or quieter. And then I feel like I can't communicate in the way that I would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, as you get closer to death, you struggle to do things more. And this is awful now because she's getting upset because now Tyler Henry is using the obvious facts about death to talk about the end of her loved one's life and the struggles that she had on her deathbed. And we're all fine with this. We're fine with Tyler Henry and his ilk making their money from this. And we hope, and we think, and again, because there is usually such a strong attempt at a positive spin, I think for the prevention of backlash, we hope that this is, you know, cathartic and affirming for the people so that they're not fucking traumatized. Still, this is the act of a grief vampire. He is harvesting her grief about the death of her grandparent. Especially if she was 18 when her grandma passed away, you probably haven't seen or experienced that much death in your life. It's probably even more upsetting for you.
When she comes across, though, she's honoring and cute and precious. So she's not really like even taking it all that seriously. Yeah. But it's this progression in the way that this comes through.
Yeah.
Do you have brothers?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so she connects way more with you than brothers.
Absolutely, that tracks.
And it's just the way it is.
I'm just special.
Female relative connects more with the female descendant. That's the wrong word, but connects more with the female relatives. Very obvious, very classic. If she'd said, no, actually, like, I think my brothers were probably closer with her, he would have spun on that. But he was hedging his bets on something that is most likely the case. And again, it's something that she gets to go, yes, definitely. And if she's saying yes, definitely, that's more for him to build on.
There's like a lot of musical references, which is kind of interesting. Really? You know,
I do love musicals.
Like Annie, you know, Annie, of course. Yeah. And your hair reminds me of Shirley Temple, of course, naturally. Yeah. But there's a cuteness, and this is just going to keep in mind if there's any photographs when you were young of you being like this. I don't know why.
I was pretty adorable.
Like,
just a common kid pose. Again, he tried again with the musical thing. He's obviously really like, I don't know why he's really going for that so hard. Maybe Tyler Henry is like one of the genuinely deluded and thinks that he just has to add to his gift or work for his gift or something in order to make the real connections. But he's really going for this musical thing that is not playing off. It's not working, Tyler. Abandon it. Abandon ship on the musical thing. So funny.
I feel like you share photos like that.
Fucking I have photos of me like that as a kid.
But it comes across very like cute and wanting to view you as a doll. And
I was dressed up like a doll.
Yep.
I peaked at 5. Let's be honest.
This sucks as well because I like her. She's really funny. She's a very funny person. She's obviously emotionally invested in this, and I just hate that is being harvested for television. That's just so awful. And again, like, your grandma viewed you as cute when you were a little girl. Fucking duh. Yeah. Give us something a little more specific, maybe.
It comes across.
But yeah, she was who wanted me to be named Fortune.
Really?
And which I consider obviously a very unique name.
Sitting back, processing the information, letting the punter provide you with information. It's like number one best thing you can hope for when you're cold reading. Oh yeah. This is giving me a lot actually. Noughts and crosses, little footprint, lot of just lot of this. That's legit. I'm convinced Tyler Henry is a real psychic. I mean, look at that piece of paper.
When we talk about the uncles, just from what you know, there's a couple different things. So one within family.
We're going off this because he already has information about this. He knows certain things. He knows her reaction. He has a lot of information to work with here. That's why he keeps going back to the uncles. Even though the guests all said pass. We don't want to hear from them. We're not interested in that. He's going back to it because it's what he has the most information about to work from. Not very respectful of their wishes though, Tyler, is it?
Obviously, LGBT conversations are here. But one thing to keep in mind is they are having me acknowledge if there are any family members from the past that we suspect might have also been a friend of Dorothy.
Oh, interesting.
They are having me highlight, if we go back generationally, some indications of that. And as far as like...
Yeah.
You might have a gay ancestor. Sure, why not? I mean, you can say that. No one can dispute it, so why the fuck not? We're going back to the uncles, and then I'm getting impressions of further back in the line. So we're not going back to the uncles, are we, Tyler? Because that didn't play off with the uncles. So you were wrong there again. Strike fucking 2. But it's all, oh, okay, because we're already predisposed to believe him. And we had all that lovely stuff about the grandma, so now we think he really is connecting with them, and we want to believe that because the grandma is a beautiful, emotional, comforting thing. In order to believe that he really, like, got those impressions and got those feelings from the grandma, we have to believe that he's right about everything else. So even if it doesn't really resonate, it doesn't sound very right, it's just, like, super vague, you'd just be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't really expect that, but sure.
I'm seeing references, White Lotus, the most recent season. There's a Southern character that says Duke, like, Duke, Duke.
Okay.
Remember that I'm saying Duke?
Okay.
There's a funniness to it, so if it ends up being a place, an animal, a person, a name...
This is great! That's number 3, that's strike 3, he's out, right? We can all, like, safely, comfortably say this guy is not a real psychic, because that's his 3rd strike. So he's doing another punt. This is another musical moment, where he's going for something specific that can be interpreted in multiple ways, and he's going for the way a certain character says a slightly old-fashioned thing in a recent TV show. And he's hoping, now, he's even explicitly saying this could be, you know, loads of things, like trying to suggest things that might provoke her into thinking hard, like, oh, maybe there was a dog called Duke, maybe, she really liked this character on TV. Like, he is so pushing this, and she is not got anything. Instinctively, if it was a relevant, important thing, it would have been like that. He's reaching, he's failing. Oh, we love to see it.
Can I tell you about the not talking thing?
Yeah.
I don't know how much information I'm supposed to share. Yeah, her last a couple days.
We're so, when I say we, I'm kind of talking about like us, the punter, or Fortune in this case, like Fortune representing like us, the person that is being psychic mediumed at, on, in, I don't... We are so desperate to believe and connect with this as truth that we are getting these false readings, these readings that don't resonate, they don't mean anything. This Duke in a southern accent doesn't mean anything clearly to Fortune. But can we go back to that earlier thing that actually did resonate, which is, again, a super vague thing about struggling to speak in the last 48 hours of your life as an elderly person, like fucking duh. But that's how much we want it, and that's exactly what Tyler Henry is banking on. Is their person being like, oh, this thing, I do resonate with that, I'm going to latch onto that, I'm going to provide more information, we're going to be able to talk about it, that's going to legitimize everything he does, without him having to do any work.
She couldn't speak, she was unconscious.
I shouldn't laugh, because this is tragic. But she couldn't speak because she was unconscious. So this idea, that kind of, for me, that kind of mitigates his whole struggling to speak and then not being able to speak. He was banking on the most generic, like, deathbed scenario of, like, struggling and fading, whereas the reality is that she couldn't speak because she was unconscious. So he effectively was wrong earlier. But because it was such a vaguely considered thing, and again, because Fortune so wants to believe it, she's taking the little nuggets of truth, of reality, and focusing on those. So this is another situation, really, in which he was wrong. Like, yes, she couldn't talk, but it wasn't that she was struggling to speak and couldn't really speak and then finally couldn't speak. It's that she was fucking unconscious, so she couldn't do anything. That is wrong. He was wrong. That was a bad reading.
And she only had 2 weeks to live, but I didn't go to college for another 3.5 months, and she like willed herself. And the last couple of days she couldn't talk. She was bedridden, so I went to say goodbye and told her I was going off to college, and she died the next morning.
Wow, so she was waiting for that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me because there's a sense of you among all your siblings.
Of course it doesn't surprise you, because you're a real psychic.
I'm trying to articulate this as specifically as I can. Of course, grandparents have a different relationship with their daughters than they do their granddaughters, but there's this sense of your grandma feeling a sense of healing with her child, but through you. So it's almost like when someone gets to kind of be like grandmother of the century, like in the best way possible. And it's not that it needs to like right any wrongs, but there's this sense of skipping a generation almost in how I'm able to now.
Again, that is 100% my grandmother. That completely describes my grandma. Her relationship with her grandkids versus her relationship with her two daughters. Because that probably describes a lot of relationships. Because of social change across the generations, because of just the way that grandparents dote on grandchildren, and the fact that they can devote all this time to them when they are retired, and the grandparents typically provide a lot of childcare support. It's vague, it's obvious. He said he wanted to get into the specifics before he said it, which again provides legitimacy, despite it not being specific even a little bit.
Send you off and give you this necessary love, and she wants it to translate to your mother as well. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. But
interesting.
yeah, it's like the bond.
Yeah.
Kind of as she's bringing up you more as daughter than even your own mother, which I know sounds strange, but it's like singling you out in a really special way.
My mom's like,
what it gives me a sense of you being able to give pride to the family, to the story, and that kind of thing. And it just seems very much like that's my girl. That is funny.
Is she watching?
Your mom? My mom is for sure watching right now. And you are definitely still her daughter. She still loves you, Mom. Don't worry. Absolutely.
It's just another example of like judging by the expressions and the reaction and the, oh God, my mom. That's another one that didn't totally play off. That's another one that didn't totally resonate or make sense. But we want to believe him and we want to believe the nice things. So we just take it in the most generic way possible and sort of kind of smile and laugh and hopefully move on quickly from it. Even though that kind of looks like another strike for Tyler.
She's like, what are you doing?
That is funny. Okay.
He's also saying, I don't know if he does this usually because this is the first time I've watched him, but he's saying things that are funny a lot. Which is a way to inspire like recollections of in-jokes or because you remember funny things, just like you remember you hold more memories associated with stronger emotions because of the release of adrenaline. That's a scientific thing. That's why we remember horrible, traumatic, scary things more than just nice everyday things usually. So that's part of it. But also, she's a comedian. Fortune is a comedian. So it's a very easy way to like get into like, oh, maybe you've told a joke about this at some point, or, you know, like comedy is a huge part of her life. So everything that comes through being, oh, this is kind of there's this funny thing, a funny connection is just like, well, yeah, that's probably a safe bet, Tyler.
Just really quickly, because we will circle back. When it comes to grandma, I mean, that's my most immediate area of focus. The object that I was holding on to, who did that belong to?
It was hers,
okay.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me as far as there being that connection.
So really safe bet at this point. It could have been another musical moment if it turned out that it wasn't hers. But by this point, we know that Fortune was really close to her grandmother, that she asked her grandmother for support when she's going to go on stage. Her grandmother is probably one of the people that she really wanted to contact and be close with, and is clearly the primary female family member that she is close with. And one of the key important items she brought with her is a sample of perfume. You're very, very safe in assuming that that is the grandmother's perfume at that point. And so that plays off as, again, another success, another bit of real psychic connection. By this point, it's fairly obvious. That is a really safe bet at that point, but it is technically a specific thing. So even though you can work it out without having any psychic powers and be pretty safe in that bet, which is what he's obviously doing because psychic powers aren't real, it still comes across as like a successful psychic moment.
There is an emphasis on mom. Just give me 1 second.
Do you want to hold one of the other
I think I might. Yeah, I might hold back onto that really fast because they're going to slingshot me in kind of a different direction. Okay.
This is great. The fact that he does automatic writing and uses objects and things is a brilliant tactic for like killing time while he thinks. He's giving himself by using objects. Most like TV psychics would just sort of walk around and just feel things and get messages. By doing the automatic writing and being like, hold on, I'm getting a few things coming through. Let me just, if I hold that, he's giving himself so much thinking time to process all the information he's gotten, to work out a few avenues, like we could go this way, we could go this way. I think this is going to have the most likely chance of resonating. He is possibly too good to be actually one of the ones that is deluded into thinking he has psychic abilities. He might be too good at this to not be out and out fraudster. I don't know. Let me know what you think, because you know me, I'm very skeptical.
I had 2 uncles and they lived with her their whole life.
Gotcha.
Very eccentric guys.
Yeah.
And this is the other reason that, again, giving space to the participant is such a huge boon, such a great thing. And again, another benefit of this, of him like, you know, doing this. And this is a performer on a TV show. This is somebody who is a professional comedian, an actor who will be trained, especially a comedian who is trained to fill live spaces. They will be trained to fill the silence. They will be very anti-dead air. So she's more likely than anyone to, while he's thinking and writing, to come in and fill in information. She's just given him some really good information that ties the 2 uncles with the grandma. Boom, this is great for him.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that really linking up with Mom.
Is that the beating to their own drum one?
Yeah,
Maybe?
for sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I've got stories.
Yeah. There's kind of a weird situation. So we have a situation right smack dab in the middle of like right 50, 51, like that kind of area. And I have a little bit of an older situation, but still very young in the 50s. Do you know approximately how old they were when they passed?
One was probably 50s, another one.
So we've got a situation now. 50s, as you start to get into that age, I think it's something like 55 or 54 or something is when like men in particular start to develop like certain health problems and things kind of start to go downhill for like physical ailments and stuff. I did read about this recently, but I can't remember the specifics, so forgive me if I'm being a bit inaccurate, but around that age, you will start to develop health problems. He already kind of tentatively earlier played with the notion that perhaps somebody died younger perhaps some of the men died younger in your family, and she acknowledged that, which means that he knows now that that is a fairly safe bet. There is a situation. Can you tell me how old they were when they died? Well, no, why don't you tell me, Tyler Henry? You're the psychic. It's also weird that he described 50s as slap bang in the middle. In the middle of what? In the middle of life? Because if they died in their 50s, that's not in the middle. In the middle of... That's just another, like, throwaway thing he said that doesn't mean anything, that isn't, like, correct, doesn't resonate. But it's all leading into this real event, this tiny nugget of truth that means that everyone accepts that there is some connection with everything he's saying, even when it is just wrong.
So it's kind of interesting. Multiple people ran the risk of feeling a lot older despite being young. There is an emphasis on someone serving in like war, and then I'm seeing like Korea in the Korean conflict, but there's also this feeling of like fudging details around this. So someone had to like lie to get in or fudge something about either my age or my well-being. I feel like they did, and that does come in.
We knew there were going to be liars.
You did say there was a liar.
It's funny. There's an emphasis on serving, but like skirting the rules. Do you know if any of the uncles served?
Yes, I believe one of them did serve in Korea.
Yeah, I'd be like the one.
But he was. I don't know how to say this. Special needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels like it kind of like maybe didn't reveal that entirely to when.
Just another good example of cold reading. He floated some stuff. Because he has asked at what age they passed away, he knows how old roughly his guests are. He knows that there were male members in the family around a certain age at a certain point in time in a certain place in the world. He's got quite a good basis to say maybe one of them served in the Korean War, and then if that plays off, then he's got a good specific that is correct, even though Fortune is not completely certain that one of them served in Korea. She's like pretty sure, and part of that reaction will be banking on the fact that she believes that Tyler is a real psychic. So that's just a good hit. Cold reading is all like, when you're trying to get specifics, it's all hedging your bets. It's all based on the information I've gathered so far, based on what I know about this person, particularly, again, the geography, the age of the person, and therefore the estimated age of their family members. What is the most likely thing to be true? Go for it. If you get a positive hit, you lean into it. Just a quick Google. is telling me that between the Korean War's outbreak in June 1950 and the Armistice Agreement in 1953, selective service inducted over 1.5 million men. So again, 1.5 million and another 1.3 million volunteers. So conscript, draft lotteries, and volunteers, that's, 2.8 million men at a certain point in time in the US serving in the Korean War. That is something really important to know, and he has probably researched loads of stuff about Tyler Henry, has probably researched loads of stuff about that, because that is again, the pure numbers game of it makes that a pretty safe bet for, okay, if you've got male relatives in your family around this era, one of them maybe served in the Korean War. Yes, they did. Oh, brilliant. I'm a great psychic. Regarding enlistment, age restrictions were pretty specific. Between 18 and 26, you had to be to register for the draft. The lotteries were based on birth date, with the oldest available selected first. So it's pretty clear from knowing that information now, which obviously is not something that the people in the live audience or the people that he's reading are looking up at the time. But us having the value of hindsight and being able to research this, we can see that that's a super safe bet. And the fact that his lying aspect was, if you'll recall, predominantly leaning towards the idea of maybe fudging their age, of fudging some information, the idea that it was actually that he had some developmental difficulties, perhaps, was offered by the pundit. That was not what Tyler Henry's suggestion was. He was banking on this idea that maybe a lot of men at the time fudged their ages because it was a very specific age range that could be conscripted to the Korean War. You don't get any of that information in the live setting, which makes it all feel much more realistic. But as soon as you start looking at this kind of information, as soon as you're like, okay, hang on, how many men around that age at that point in history in the US were conscripted into the Korean War? Oh, millions. Okay, well, it makes sense why a psychic would be correct about that. It's good stuff. It's golden stuff.
We're working. There's a sense of skirting the rules. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I got to figure that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if we talk about an uncle, one doesn't give me, when we talk about children, much feeling. Another, though, is having me highlight two individuals who'd be beneath him, and that would be like kids. Okay. So did any of your uncles have two?
Like kids. Two individuals beneath him that would be like kids. One can easily be Fortune. We know that Fortune has brothers. So it could be two brothers of Fortune. It could be Fortune and a brother. Two cousins. Could be they had two kids. It could be they had one kid and the other one is Fortune. Or the other one is a brother of Fortune. This is again, something that sounds to the untrained ear like it might be specific, but actually is a very vague opening.
Children?
One of a different one of, okay. They're all siblings, but yeah, he had two kids.
Okay. There might have been a dynamic before he passed in which there was a distance.
There might have been a dynamic in which there was a distance. So we failed at him having kids, at this one that he is talking about, this guy who was in the Korean War. He hasn't had kids. That hasn't played off, but we can put it down to his nephews or nieces, and there's a distance. We also know that two of the brothers lived together with the grandma for a long time, so there's quite likely, there was a fairly safe bet that if there were kids, that they would relate to both uncles in a way. This is just, more like guesswork and assumptions based on vague premises and information offered up by the pundit.
There was.
Yeah. And the nature of his passing didn't allow him to be able to kind of get it all out and mend that, but he's at peace and he wants them to be okay with their individual feelings. It's okay to be...
Isn't that wonderful? Because that is exactly what I described earlier as how every psychic medium portrays the difficult relationships and difficult aspects of relationships. Okay, I've been waffling on for a long time, so I'm going to stop the video there. If you want me to watch more, if you want me to finish this episode of Live from the Other Side with Tyler Henry, with my expert cold reading explanations. Or if you want me to look at another psychic or more of Tyler Henry's stuff, let me know down below. Do like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Try hitting the notification button because people are missing my videos, and that is so sad for all of us. The best way to support this channel is via the Patreon. With that, I must give a big old thank you and a shout out to my giant chickens and colossal quackers over on Patreon. Hang on, I'm getting something through. I'm receiving a message. I'm getting Fido. He likes turkey treats. He's saying, "God damn it, Conla." Most importantly, have yourselves a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.